When running PBs as a 50-year-old athlete seems impossible, I'm here to tell you that you can absolutely get faster as a masters athlete despite your age. But it's not going to happen by accident. There are a handful of training strategies that when you implement them correctly in your training, magical things start to happen. In this video, we're going to share with you a simple 3-step framework that is going to help you improve your running performance as you age. We're also going to share with you why your age is actually an advantage to running faster. Before we jump into the first prong of the 3-step framework, there is one thing that needs to be in place. In fact, it's non-negotiable for the rest of it to work.
The reason this becomes a non-negotiable is that we're constantly losing lean muscle mass as we age. And so this aspect becomes your biggest ally moving forward. I would even go so far as to say that we would consider dropping a running session to make sure that you are doing this. And that aspect that I'm talking about is strength training. I know you've heard about strength training over and over and over again, and it's almost been drummed into you, but as an over 50s runner, again, this becomes a non-negotiable. So what kind of strength training? In particular, we're looking for resistance type strength training. So people often say, well, should I be cycling, or is rowing strength training? Does hiking count as strength training? Those are forms of cross training, which are very valuable as well. But in order to mitigate that loss of lean muscle mass over time, we have to be adding in resistance training. So what is that? Essentially moving your body against a form of resistance. So that could be body weight training. So go and do a body weight push-up. You are pushing your body against a form of resistance, your body weight being the resistance. You can, of course, start adding in some bands and some weights as you're getting better and better and stronger. And so the key here is also to make sure that you're doing this in a safe and progressive manner. Your technique is absolutely vital. Don't just jump out and start deadlifting 100 kilograms. Ensure that your technique is correct, and also that you're moving from where you are currently and progressing in a good manner moving forward.
All right, so now that we know strength training is an absolute must, the first step in the framework makes me think about making dough. I'm not talking about making dough, I'm talking about making dough. I'm obviously referring to bread dough. So if we're making our dough, you add all your ingredients in, your flour, your yeast, your salt, your water, etc. See your running components as various ingredients. So running, your strength training, your cross training. In order for your bread to work really well, that dough now needs to sit and rest. The same applies for your running. See all the ingredients and the components in your running training. In order for it to work properly, you need to recover. You need to rest. The reason rest and recovery is so important for runners, and even more for aging runners, is the fact that with all the training happening, your body is taking shots and breaking down systematically every single time you do a training session. The recovery is where your body actually adapts to what's happened. So sort of see it as your body taking a knock from a training session going, I really didn't like what just happened. During that rest period, it allows it to get stronger, so the next time it knows how to handle that training load and actually be better and improve in all aspects. I know as runners, rest and recovery is usually seen as a weakness. We're trying to train every day, but it is absolutely important, as I mentioned, in order for us to adapt, that recovery and that rest has to take place. There are different ways of doing it. When we refer to rest, we're talking about absolute rest, so not doing any training. And we do usually recommend here at Coach Parry at least one full rest day per week. When we're talking about recovery, that can still be active recovery. So whether you are maybe doing a light swim or a light cycle, even going for a walk is seen as an active recovery session. So we're just taking a lot of the load off. The body's still moving, there's movement in the muscles, but we're not putting that massive eccentric loading and pounding on the body as when we are doing harder training sessions or longer training sessions. So from a recovery point of view, it is either some active recovery in the week as well, but more importantly in your periodization or your training cycles. More often than not, our training cycles generally work on a 4-week cycle. We usually work on 3 weeks of consistent building, and then 1 week where we'll drop the load, maybe even drop the intensity, and that's where our recovery happens, our adaptation happens, before going back in to the next building cycle. For older female athletes, literature actually shows that working on a 3-week cycle is even better. So 2-week build to 1-week recovery cycle, and then back in to our building cycle.
To understand the next step in the framework, I want you to think about your running watch. Most running watches these days operate off a rechargeable battery, and so we constantly have to make sure that we've got enough battery so that we can get through our next workout, and importantly upload it before the watch dies, because if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen, right? Well, running and recovery are much the same way. If you don't fuel yourself for recovery and make sure that your nutrition is on point, you're not going to be able to follow Devlin's advice and ensure that you recover properly. We have to make sure as athletes that we are both fueling for the exercise itself and we are providing fuel for the recovery. So we essentially have to break this down into 3 little aspects. The first is, are you providing the fuel for you to be able to do the exercise that you are doing? We know that most of the exercise that we do is going to be fueled by fats and carbohydrates, and that the human body struggles to access fat for energy unless it has a constant supply of carbohydrates to provide that energy. And so you have to make sure that in your diet you are providing yourself with healthy fats and that you are not cutting out carbs, otherwise you're going to have problems fueling your exercise. You're going to feel tired all the time. And then that takes us into recovery nutrition, and that actually covers 2 more of the 3 aspects of nutrition. The first is that we have to have carbohydrates quite soon after exercise so that we can refuel the muscle glycogen, because that is the carbohydrate source that we're actually going to be using during exercise. We've got a really good window of 30 to 40 minutes where the body is good at taking those carbohydrates and pushing them into the muscles to store as muscle glycogen. So make sure that you use that so that your muscles are ready to go again the next day. And then as we get older, it is really important that we provide enough protein. If you are going to be doing the strength training, which remember is a non-negotiable, we've got to provide the body with the building blocks so that the muscles can recover properly, but much more important, they can supercompensate. And that's where nutrition plays a critical role. The good thing about protein is that there isn't a specific window. As long as you're providing enough protein to your body during the day with a good, healthy, regular diet, then your body will be able to repair itself from those strength sessions and compensate, and you'll be able to reclaim some of that lost strength as you age.
Now that we have our nutrition and recovery in place, the third one might feel a little bit surprising. And the reason for that is, as you're aging, you feel like you have to work harder and harder and harder to get to where you once were. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. Less is definitely more in this situation. By running less, you are going to be getting more benefits. And the reason is due to all of that recovery that Dev spoke about. The only aspect where less is not more is with regards to strength training.
As we said at the start of this video, your age is an advantage when it comes to running faster. But another advantage you can use to your benefit is cross-training. Where cross-training falls into being such a great tool in your overall program is the fact that it still allows you to do a lot of the aerobic work, a lot of the volume, however, without that eccentric load and impact that running might have. So take cycling, for example. You can go out and do an 1 to 2 hour cycling session, and you're going to get great aerobic benefit from it, great volume, but you are not taking the same damage to the body as what running for an hour might do, which means you can recover a lot quicker. It means you can get back to your training or your next running session a lot quicker. So cross-training is a really great tool for you to implement. I've mentioned cycling. Swimming also works really well. The rowing machine works really well. Even a Stairmaster or an elliptical works really well for cross-training purposes because, again, you don't have that high impact of running. We do often get asked that if you are going to do cross training, where and how do you fit it into your training program? You need to listen to your body, and this is a really good tool that if you are feeling maybe a little bit fatigued or you're feeling a little bit sore from the current running training that you are doing, maybe drop a run and add a cross training session in. As I said, you're still getting massive benefits from that cross training session, but you're just not loading as much. So there's nothing wrong with you dropping a run. So if you typically run 4 runs a week, you can cut that down to 3 runs a week and add a cycle or a swim into that particular session. It's going to give you the same benefits, but you are going to recover a lot quicker and a lot better for maybe next week, where you can bring in an extra running session.
Getting older can sometimes be a very frustrating experience. Our bodies are failing us, our minds may not be as sharp as they once were, but there's one thing that money can't buy. And you, as an over 50s runner, have tons of it: experience. If you've been running for years, you understand your body really, really well. And so this experience becomes really useful as we're aging. You can start to determine the difference perhaps between something that is a niggling pain and an injury. You know which training sessions work really, really well for you, which ones you respond well to, and which ones you perhaps need a little bit more recovery from. And so I want you to hone in on those aspects, because those become particularly key as we're getting older, because we want to really do what works for us, and everything else we want to just put to the side. As a matter of fact, you are not going to be running a PB after the age of 50 without doing strength training. In fact, you are not going to be running a PB after the age of 50 without doing the right type of strength training that improves your running. Watch this video next for 5 bodyweight exercises that runners over the age of 50 should be doing, but more importantly, how to do them so you don't get injured.